NC State football is gearing up to head west into Carter Finley West. Time to prepare Wolfpack Nation for war.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our Wednesday opening sponsor is FanDuel. You can win big this season in the NFL or college football on FanDuel. New customers can place just a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to get started. Happy Wednesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. A little bit of an administrative note here on Wednesday. We're going to give you this episode here. Obviously, NC State basketball plays Thursday afternoon, which is Thanksgiving. We're considering doing like a quick post-game live for that for anyone that wants to join us. But this will be the last actual episode of the week. So please be sure to enjoy your Thanksgiving. We'll potentially see you post-game Thursday evening. And then, of course, we have the showdown with UNC on Saturday. And there will be a post-game for that as well. But Kenton, without further ado, we are heading over west into Dirty Footland. NC State football is fighting for their bowl eligibility lives. UNC has already earned that. They are 6-5, but it's a definite battle of the mid here coming up on Saturday. Before we get into the details real quickly, Kenton, give me your point of view on UNC football this season.
I mean, they are exactly who we think they are. They're a team that they've gone through some hardships. We knew what the story was going to be for this team. It was going to be all about Omarion Hampton in the morning, evening, noon, and night. Even if Max Johnson was healthy, just turns out he wasn't. So, you're looking at a little bit different of a situation there with Jacoby Criswell at quarterback. Their defense is their defense. I mean, let's make no bones about this. This is not a overly physical defense that you're just terrified of or anything along those lines. Again, it is very much so what you would expect from a UNC team. With all due respect, no, let me take that back. With no due respect to Mac Brown and company, I mean, again, this is very much so who they are. Bottom half of the league in terms of yards allowed per game, in terms of points allowed per game. They're also pretty low in those rankings as well. And don't get me wrong, I know some people are going to say, well, the Wolfpack are behind them in both of those stats. That is true. You are not wrong. But have Grayson and I said at any point in time, the Wolfpack defense is phenomenal. They're spectacular. They're great. In fact, have we both not lamented how mid they've been? The only difference is this. NC State has played offenses this season. And by offenses, I mean offenses with actual ball players on them. Just a quick rundown of that schedule, which don't get me wrong. If NC State had it, I'm not saying we'd be a 10, 11, 12 win team, but we'd be considerably better than what we are. You're looking at Minnesota, UNC Charlotte, NC Central, James Madison. James Madison hung 70 on those boys. You're looking at Duke, Pitt, Georgia Tech, Virginia, FSU, Wake Forest, and Boston College. I mean, again, this team is exactly who we think they are. They're a team that's shown some high, I wouldn't even say very high highs during the season, but their lows have just been a 20-point loss to a Power 4 team or to a Group of 5 team that if they wouldn't have scored in the second half, they would have won that football game. And a 20-point throttling or 19-point throttling by Boston College, who lost their starting quarterback to the portal this late in the season. They're exactly who I think they are. Not a particularly tough team. Grayson and I were very disappointed, very disheartened, very sad to bring you the news of Williams' retirement. But hopefully we can send them off with some happy trails here. This team just is what they are.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to categorize them because prototypically under William over there in Chapel Hill, what they have been doing is completely wasting the talent of an elite offensive player. That is still true this year. And the defense is just very mediocre. All of that is still true here in 2024. Their offense starts, runs, and ends with Omarion Hampton at running back. If he does well, the team does well. If he does not, the team does not. It is literally quite that simple. Their quarterback is Jacoby Criswell. This is a guy that played for 3 years at UNC, transferred to Arkansas, and then transferred back. Now finds himself as the starting quarterback, as they too have had a quarterback carousel over there. But Jacoby Criswell has actually had a pretty decent year. He's thrown for over 2,000 pass yards, 12 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions. His numbers are really not that different from that of CJ Bailey. So you kind of get a wash there at the quarterback position. But I want to again bring up Omarion Hampton. That is the guy. And he was one of the guys to keep your eye on last year as well. And the Wolfpack defense did an outstanding job of containing him. If my memory serves correctly, I think we held him to like 28 total rushing yards. That was outstanding. If you can do that again this year, perhaps you'll be on to something. But it's no secret that UNC is going to want to pound the rock, and then probably pound the rock some more. Hampton has over 1,400 rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns. That is the engine that makes their offense go. Quickly transitioning over to the defense, Kenton. UNC's pass defense is 9th in the ACC. Their run defense is 8th in the ACC, just very average. And I know any Chapel Hill fans that are listening to this, you're like, well, the Wolfpack are average too. Yes, we are average. That's why we're 5-6 and y'all are 6-5. It's a battle of the mid. But when you're looking at the UNC defense, Kenton, what does NC State really need to prioritize?
How do you beat them? The question is, what do you do best? Just do that. Like, there isn't hey, they've been great against the run this year. They've been great against the pass this year. No, they haven't been. There's not a single, again, people do not understand what I mean when I say this. There is not a single defensive category that you would look at and say, oh boy, this squad, I'll tell you what, they'll take that away from you like nobody's business. In terms of passing defense, bottom half of the league. In terms of rushing defense, I believe that they're just barely in the top half of the league. But again, that can be a little misleading because of some of the teams that they played. And if you look at, to me, it's not just about your best games. It's also about your worst games. If I'm looking at how this happened, if I'm looking at how you got to your record, be it 5-6 like the Wolfpack, be it 6-5 like the Dirty Foot Club, I want to know the total summation of, hey, your losses, what's happened there as well. And I'm telling you, it has been all over the place. There is not one single point of failure where you could say, oh, well, if we just did this one thing better, we would have been so much better. Because against James Madison, just out of curiosity, how many yards do you think they passed for in getting up to 70 points?
I think it was something like the 4s or the 5s.
388 yards.
Pretty close.
388. Well, you know what? That's just because they have a really good quarterback when it comes to throwing the ball. And I'm sure that they didn't run the ball all that well. How many yards do you think that team ran for, Grayson?
I think it was something in the 2s.
223. You are correct. But you know what? That was early in the season, Grayson. You know, are we podcasters or are we historians? Let's stop bringing up old stuff, shall we? Their last game against Boston College, 41-21. Just out of curiosity, you think that they got a lot better at stopping the run than they did back then? Because, I mean, logically, if that's your point of failure, if that's your weakness, you'd address it. How many yards do you think Boston College ran for, Grayson?
I'm pretty sure it was also a lot. I think it was high 1s, if not into the 2s.
230.
Yeah.
230. But you know what? Hey, at least their quarterback is new. They probably shut him down. What do you think his QBR was? And mind you, 1 to 100 is the scale. What do you think his QBR was?
I'm going to say something around like 70.
79.8. And for those of you out there in TV land or podcast land listening to this, Grayson and I did not go over a single one of these stats before this very moment.
Off the cuff.
So this is Grayson's perception, which is very much so in line with reality every single time here. Now, have they had banner games where they showed up and showed out? Absolutely. I wouldn't even say banner. I'd just say they played some offenses that were, not as good, and they look good against them. But in all seriousness, if you want to beat this defense, do what the hell you do best. Yeah, there isn't a, hey, don't you throw that ball against this UNC defense, or, oh, man, I'll tell you what, that front seven is tough. You better find a way to air it out, or else do what you do best. You'll be fine.
And another stat in college football that I really think tells you who is turnover margin. We harp on that a lot on here. UNC is a complete net zero. Statistically, you cannot be more mid. They've turned the ball over 14 times. They've forced 14 turnovers. Dead middle net zero. That's the type of team they are. They are just average. And yes, NC State to that point is below average. We're at a -5. So there's a lot of mid going on here. That's why we've called it the mid bowl for countless weeks. These are two teams that can't get out of their own way, and they're going to fight on Saturday to see who is less than potentially more mid, if that makes any sense to any of you at all. That's the type of game we're looking at.
Well, the Battle of the Midway took place in the Pacific Ocean, and it's very interesting that this year we have the Battle of the Mid when both of the teams that are far west coast from the Pac-12, or two of the teams that are far west coast out of the now defunct, basically, Pac-12, came on over here. This turns into the battle of just the middest of the mid. This is, again, very much so just the Atlantic Battle of the Midway, which is, again, just the battle of mid.
That's pretty much the Spark Notes version for you. Coming up next, we're going to get into the keys. What does NC State need to do in order to win this game? This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our Wednesday sponsor is FanDuel. Tackle the NFL action this season on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, when new customers sign up, you can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in just one singular place. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the very same page that you're placing all of your bets. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to join today. Again, you'll get started with that $150 back in bonus bets if that first pesky $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com in order to get started. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Middle portion of our Wednesday show. Now time to get into Kenton's keys for the Dirty Foot Club. What does NC State need to do in order to walk out of Carter Finley West with a W? Here we go.
The first key here, take care of the ball, man. Please take care of the ball. We see the difference in so many of these close games being the turnover margin. And it's not even that, hey, we're not getting a ton of takeaways. We're just giving the ball away at way too high of a clip. Question, Grayson, how many turnovers did we have against Syracuse?
I believe it was 3, and they all came in the red zone.
Huh. Interesting. Very interesting there. Did we take care of the ball against Tennessee? Did we not have any turnovers against them?
We did not take care of the ball.
What about the Clemson game? I'm sure we took care of the ball against them. Man.
Nope, not in that one either.
But you know what? We've cleaned it up, right? We've gotten the offense with some continuity. CJ Bailey's got a little bit of time under his belt here. Against Georgia Tech, we took care of the ball well, right?
No, I think we had 4, if I'm not mistaken.
That's very interesting. I believe that I'm sorry, Grayson. Against Wake Forest, we had that taking care of the ball. Right? Like, we did, right?
Would you believe me if I said also no?
There seems to be a trend, methinks. Amongst all of our losses, there seems to be a trend. Have we won the turnover margin in any of our losses?
In our losses? No, we have not.
Take care of the damn ball, okay? Take care of the ball. That's it. That's it. Take care of the football. When you have it, don't give it back to the other team.
I think especially coming out of this loss to Georgia Tech, it just gets that much more important because CJ Bailey turned into CJ Vick magically, but at the same time, you end up giving them 3 interceptions. One of them went back to the house, just complete rally killer. You have to think if CJ throws maybe even just like 1 interception, NC State probably wins that game. It's that important. This is why we always talk about turnover margin because at least in my belief, it is like the #1 most important stat in all of college football. If your team takes care of the ball, it gives you an exponentially better chance to win the football game. This Saturday will be simply no different. The second offensive key?
Number 2, run for 175 on the ground. And I know everybody's going to look at me and say, oh, my God, Ken, that's so crazy. We're not a team that's been great at running the ball all year. Whoop-de-woo-woo-woo. Has Boston College just been this physical powerhouse, just steamrolling folks all year?
Without Castellanos, all of a sudden they are.
But you get my point there. Like Boston College has not been a team all year that AJ Dillon ain't walking through that door. Okay. Andre Williams ain't walking through that door. Boston College is fine on the ground. Don't get me wrong. I think they're decent. They're not world beaters in terms of running the football, and yet they racked up 200 plus. So I think that the demand is clear here. The demand is extremely clear. You have to run the ball, because when you run the ball, that's when you eat the clock. When you eat the clock, all of a sudden, you keep Omarion Hampton sitting down. You keep him from getting warm. You keep him from doing those things and having those long drives that take the ball out of your offense's hands. So running for 175 is going to be critically important because, again, when you get a lead, you want to put the game away.
It still makes me sick to my stomach that we ran for over 250 yards on the ground against Georgia Tech and still find a way to lose that football game. However, that importance, you can kind of see that trail into this game with the Dirty Foot Club. If you can get it done on the ground, it takes a lot of the pressure off of CJ Bailey to have to feel like he needs to be perfect through the air. And I mean, he was by no means perfect through the air against Georgia Tech, but again, when you're able to establish the run, it opens up so many doors for your offense. And I want to also say this, if Hollywood Smothers is not getting the bulk of the carries, what more can you say about the complete ineptitude of this offense and its play calling? There is no planet in which Hollywood Smothers is not the best running back that NC State has on the roster. I don't know how much more clear it can possibly get. That guy needs to get majority of the carries, if not every single damn one of them. There's simply no reason we're continually running Jordan Waters, respectfully, into the back end of our offensive line. It is complete nonsense, and I don't want to see it a single time against the Dirty Foot Club. And our third and final offensive key.
Third and final offensive key, I need Joe Lee, Noah Rogers, and Hollywood Smothers to combine for 20 touches. Here's the deal, right? I wouldn't even, as much as I like Hollywood Smothers, and I know, hey, he is our most explosive option, I wouldn't even be mad if we subbed in Kendrick Raphael for him in this instance, because they are very similar in terms of their production this year, okay? So of our top three backs, and this is not to call out Jordan Waters, he has done a fine enough job, but of our top three backs, two of them are averaging 5.7 yards per carry. One of them is averaging nearly a yard less. The back that's averaging nearly a yard less also has a 94-yard long run on the season. So if you take away one run, in essence, you're taking away about nearly 20-some-odd% of his rushing yards in total. So I'm saying that to say these are the guys that need the touches, point blank, period. There is no way around that. There is no way over it, no way under it. Grayson, quick question. How many receptions did Justin Jolie have last game?
I think it was only 3, which is blasphemy.
How many yards did he have last game?
That was also low. I think it was under 15, but I don't remember the exact number.
You're correct. I believe it was 11.
Oh,
Give me a wild guess as to who the leading receiver on this team is in terms of yards.
Justin Jolie.
Justin Jolie by 160 yards. Exactly. I don't know what else anybody could ask for. But you know what, Grayson? We do have some big play receivers on the outside. Give me who you think is the leader in terms of yards per reception.
That's also Justin Jolie.
Yes, sir. It is. It is also Justin Jolie. And the reason that I added Noah Rogers into here, and again, to me, you can sub out Smothers for Raphael. You can sub out Rogers for Grimes because, again, Wesley Grimes has shown up and shown out at a high level as well. But the biggest point of emphasis here, get the ball into your playmakers' hands. And if you're going to force it to KC, at least get creative in doing so. This list is not to say KC is not a playmaker. I don't want him on this list. This list is saying you have force-fed it to him. And KC, this is why it's not a knock on KC. He's so good, he limits your creativity. when you look at him as a player, you no longer consider him, hey, this is a receiver that we need to scheme open. We need to draw up things that's going to get him running routes downfield. Because to me, in terms of pure route running, I don't think we have a guy better than KC. I don't. However, for whatever reason, everybody looks at KC in terms of our coaching staff and says, we could cook him on a post. We could cook him on a double move. We could cook him on a corner. We could cook him on a slot fade. But you know what I want to do? Screen. That's what I want from KC. I see him, and I see a screen. He can run a dig. He can run a bang aid. He can run a post. He can run a comeback. He can run whatever, however you want it, he can give it to you. But I want a screen. So that's why these guys are up here, because I don't want our coaching staff to get too used to going to KC, because, again, they're only going to do screens, even though his package is much more expensive than that. And we have not seen that same level of we need to screen these guys up with these three.
I think the saddest part of us talking so much over the course of the season about getting the ball into the hands of the playmakers is it's kind of turned out that we're just yelling into the void, because week after week after week, it just doesn't happen. Whether it's Justin Jolie or Hollywood Smothers or KC for a lot of this season, we simply cannot find a way to get the ball into the hands of the guys that make the biggest difference on the field. And how that is still the case in week 12, well, I mean, that's exactly why we're 5-6 on the season. So overall, if I were to put all of these points into just one umbrella, just find a way. Find a way to outscore Carolina in this game. You have to find a way. I don't care what it takes, whether it's on the ground, through the air, or some magical combination of both from CJ Bailey. Just find a way. I think we all know what's about to happen to the offensive staff this offseason. If this is the swan song, dump it out. Dump out the playbook and find a way to put points on the scoreboard. Switching gears and getting into the defense.
Defense, put Omarion Hampton in an ice box. For those of you who don't know, do the knowledge on B2K. Do the knowledge on who Omarion is, okay? Do the knowledge on that. It's early 2000s R&B. But with that being said, he needs to be under 125 yards. That team has played how many games this season? 11, correct? All right. Now, in those games, 8 of them, he was over 125 yards. What do you think their record is in those games, Grayson?
I'm going to say 6-2.
5-3, but very close. Very close there. Now, in the 3 games where he was held under 125, what do you think their record is?
1-2?
Yes, they're 1-2. Long story short, the book is out. The book is clear. If you can hold him to that type of production to where he's not a demigod on the football field, guess what's going to happen? More likely than not. Take a wild guess. Take a look around. Take a peek at what's going to happen when he's held under 125 yards. And by the way, just so everybody's clear here, the one game that they won where he did not go off for 125 yards or more in total, the one game that they won that fit that criteria was against UNC Charlotte. So I think we have a little bit better talent than the 49ers. Don't you think, Grayson? I think just by a little bit. You know,
I would certainly hope so.
I would hope so too. So if you hold this team, if you hold Omarion Hampton to under 125 total yards, I think you'll be just fine. I think everywhere he goes, somebody needs to be going with him. Obviously, stopping the run is stopping the run. Fill gaps, make tackles. He is 6 feet, 220 pounds of defensive coordinator nightmare fuel. That's what he is. He's big, he's fast, he's quick, he's strong. He's a lot of things that you want from a running back. I'd be very surprised if he wasn't one of the top 2 or 3 running backs off the board next year. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. That's enough of me complimenting Dirty Foot Clubbers. But in all seriousness, the man is the real deal. If you can stop him, you can effectively stop this offense.
Hampton was one of the better running backs in the entire country last year. Believe it or not, coming into this game with us, he's on pace to outdo his numbers that he put up last year. He's one of the best running backs in the country, and that's why it is so important that NC State can find a way to bottle him up. I've already said it on here once. This offense with Carolina, it begins, it middles, and it ends with Amarian Hampton. If you can find a way to hold him under this mark of 125, that's excellent. If you can keep him out of the end zone, that's even better. I think a little bit of an added bonus is Tony Gibson has already seen him once. Now, we don't have Peyton Wilson. That has been made abundantly clear this year. But if you can find a way to scheme him very similarly to what you did last year, you give your defense a shot. State did good in the run defense against Georgia Tech. You're going to need that very same effort against Amarian Hampton. Otherwise, it's going to get ugly in Chapel Hill. Our second defensive key?
Force at least 2 turnovers, also known as winning the turnover margin. Here's the thing, right? If you force this team, and we'll get into this later, this wasn't a key, this isn't an official key, but this is an unofficial key. You need to come out and call all of this, win one for the Gipper talk early. You need to set the tone early in the same way that we did last year. Here's the thing. It pairs with number 1, because if you force Amarian Hampton to be an auxiliary tool and not their main thing, if you force them to be the side and not the appetizer and not the entree, well, then what becomes the entree, Grayson?
Criswell.
And I'm going to tell you what, he's an excellent baker that specializes in turnovers, all types. Apple turnovers, strawberry turnovers, does not matter. That young man will throw the ball directly into somebody's chest. That's just who he is at some level. And that's why they've done an amazing job of keeping the ball out of his hands, not making him make a ton of difficult reads or anything like that this season. Because, again, I think he's serviceable. I think he's all right. But he's a fifth-year guy who, again, has that tendency to throw it to the other team. So if we take advantage of that, force turnovers, at least 2 will be just fine.
I think Jacoby Criswell is good enough to beat us, but if Carolina is to beat us, I don't think it will be because of Jacoby Criswell. Right. He's a serviceable quarterback, but he's no Drake May. He's no Sam Howell. He's no insert elite quarterback name here. He's not that. Yeah. But he does have a good arm, and he's shown his arm in several different instances this year. He can throw for a decent amount of yards. His pass catchers are pretty good as well. J.J. Jones and his leading tight end is John Copenhaver. They can beat you through the air, but that's the situation I think NC State wants to force. You want to force Criswell to have to beat you through the air because that means you're doing such a good job at containing Hampton. You want to force Criswell to have to air it out and try to spread the field because eventually, like Kenton was saying there, he's going to turn it over. He's going to make a poor throw somewhere over the course of this game for NC State to try and take advantage of. That's what you want to do. If you can force a turnover or multiple turnovers in this game, I like our chances to get it done. And our third and final defensive key.
Hold UNC to less than 6 explosive plays. Here's the deal. I don't think they're an offense that can do it right every time. Although Amarian Hampton is, again, he is who he is, and you would think to yourself that lends itself to this powerful, road grade, slow the game down, drain some clock style of football. It's not who they are. Yep. It's not really in their constitution to be that way and be like, hey, listen, we're going to take our time. We're going to take our time. We're going to throw it Amarian Hampton up at you time and time and time again, and then we're going to come at you with Davion Goss behind him and to kind of give him a spell there, and we'll be okay. They're not that type of team. They are still a team that is very reliant on big plays. They are still a team that is very much so like, hey, listen, we're going to boom sometimes, we're going to bust sometimes, and we'll live with those results. And just in case you don't believe me here, again, going back to their very last game, so nobody can say, oh, you're looking at early in the season, and if you looked at later in the season, you'd see that we were much better in this way, that way, and the third way. Well, okay, that's fine. If you look at the touchdowns that UNC scored last game, one of them was on a pick six. One of them was on a long drive where they got a short 2-yarder. However, on that drive, there was a 36-yard pass complete. And their final touchdown of the game was on a drive where Copenhaver catches one for 24, and then you get Goss running it in for 10. So you had one pick six and 2 drives where there was an explosive. Those are the only drives when they scored.
Yeah. It's not rocket science here.
Make this team do it right every time. Make them beat you incrementally down the field. And if they beat you like that, you live with it. But if you look up and you're like, Damn, we allowed a 50-yarder. Damn, we allowed a 40-yarder. Oh, shucks, we allowed a 60-yarder. Yeah, that ain't going to get it done.
I think that's the perfect way to phrase it. If they can inch their way down the field and score on like a 12 and 13 play drive, you tip your hat. But don't make life easier on them by allowing Hampton to go for a 50-yard run or bombing it over the top to Jones for 48 yards. That's what you have to avoid if you're the NC State defense. To Kenton's point, I don't think they can line up and do it right every single time. So make them work for it. Make Criswell have to stretch the field. Make Hampton have to earn every single yard that he gets. That is how this defense will put themselves in a great spot to force UNC to have to do it right. That's the spot you want to be in. Coming up next, we're going to switch gears and talk some Turkey Day hoops. NC State men's basketball is out in San Diego, ready for a Final Four rematch with Purdue. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple minutes here of our Wednesday episode. Time to talk some Turkey Day hoops. NC State men's basketball has traveled all the way out to San Diego. They're playing it against Purdue in a Turkey Day tournament. This is a Final Four rematch from last year. You don't have to hold your breath. Purdue no longer has Zach Edey. That train has taken off from the station, thank goodness. However, Purdue is still very much a good basketball team. They shoot the three ball just about as good as any team in the country, and that, for me, is the most important point for NC State. Kenton, what do you feel are the most important parts of NC State if they want to win this basketball game?
Yeah, so last year we talked a lot about, hey, you've got to stop Edey, you've got to stop Edey, you've got to stop Edey. But this year you're looking at a little different of a situation. And by a little different of a situation, I simply mean this. That team does not have a big that scores at that same clip and at that same level. Do they have a guy that's 7'2" on the roster? Yes, and he's actually not their tallest guy if you include their injured freshman. But with that in mind now, you are looking at a very serious difference in terms of the production of Edey, who I believe was the Conference Player of the Year in terms of the Big Ten the last couple of years.
National Player of the Year.
Oh, I'm sorry. National Player of the Year in terms of what he did the last couple of years to who they have now as their primary big. So I wouldn't say night and day because that'd be disrespectful. I think that they're fine players, but again, it's just not quite what you were looking at last year. And again, just as a clear example of like, hey, this is a very different squad than what they were last year. Their leading player in blocks on this season is still the freshman who got hurt in the second game, Daniel Jacobson. He's still their leader in blocks 6 games in. So it's a different experience there. And I would think running this team off the three-point line, that's where you need to go. That's what you need to do. Again, the guards are the stars of the show. Between Miles Colvin, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Kaufman-Wren, 4 guys that are combining to shoot well over 40% from deep. I don't think you understand this. These 4 guys, I think they're closer to 50 cumulatively in terms of who's scoring from where. But very seriously, you look at Colvin, 42% from deep. Braden Smith, 36.7% from deep. Fletcher Lawyer, 61.9%. You heard that right. 61.9, and Trey Kaufman-Wren at 40 or at 50 on the nose here. This is a group that can shoot the blood out the ball. You have to run them off the three-point line. If you do not, it's going to be an all-night thing. Shout out to the Invisible Man Band.
Yeah, and NC State so far this year, they've had very good perimeter defense. However, no secret that this will be the toughest test to date. Like Kenton just outlined for you, they shoot the ball, they shoot it early, they shoot it often, and they shoot it with a high rate of success. If NC State wants to keep up in that fashion, NC State is going to have to find a way to connect from 3 multiple times in this game. Now, we are shooting, I believe it's like 28 or 29% from deep. That ain't going to cut it in a game like this. What you don't want to happen is for it to get into a track meet where it comes down to 3-point shooting, so that perimeter defense will be imperative. 2 more things I'm looking at, rebounding and turnovers. NC State has actually been rebounding at a higher rate than Purdue. However, Purdue's faced a lot tougher competition than we have up to this point. Rebounding will be imperative in this game. If you give Purdue second and third and fourth chances to knock down a 3, you will get buried very, very quickly. So I think the absence of Daniel Jacobson for Purdue is very substantial. He's their 7'4" freshman. Without him in the middle, perhaps you do have a better shot at grabbing more boards than they do, but it's going to be all hands on deck. It's going to take Ben Middlebrooks in the fire. It's going to take Dontrez Styles in the fire. Jaden Taylor, Michael O'Connell, literally every single guy has to give maximum effort to rebound this basketball. Because if you don't, you're going to give them multiple chances, and more often than not, they will knock down the 3 ball. And again, my second point is turnovers. Purdue is a very disciplined team under Matt Painter. They're not going to turn the ball over that many times in this game. They're averaging under 12 per game. That's a pretty solid mark. So for NC State, a team that likes to play a lot faster this year than in the years past, you've got to take care of the basketball. Whether you're in transition or just running a set, you cannot afford an extensive amount of turnovers because, again, Purdue will bury you. You want to make this game kind of slow and methodical in a sense. I know that's kind of contradictory to what NC State has done so far this year, but you want to limit Purdue to like 1 or a maximum of 2 shots every time they come down the floor. I actually love NC State in this game if you can force them into a situation like that one. So take care of the basketball, rebound the basketball, and run them off the 3-point line. I cannot wait to see what NC State finally looks like against stiffer competition. We will get our answer in the late afternoon of Turkey Day. To that point, I already mentioned it. We're considering doing like a post-game live for anyone that's interested. I know it's Thanksgiving, so don't think of it as mandatory by any means, but if anyone wants to get on, chop it up with us, maybe some Q&A sessions, we'll be on there. Hopefully celebrating a win, but even in a loss, I think it would be good to have a post-game after this one. So until then, be sure to mash that like button, hit that subscribe button, drop all of your comments in the comment box. Tell us what you think about Kenton's keys for the Dirty Foot Club. Any other substantial keys that you have on your mind, drop those in the box as well. We will see you late afternoon on Turkey Day. Also, happy Thanksgiving to all. Please enjoy Thanksgiving with your friends and family. Thanksgiving kind of snuck up on me this year. I can't believe it's already the holiday season, but please enjoy Thanksgiving. We'll see you post-game on Thursday. And then, as always, post-game for us and the Dirty Foot Club on the Gridiron. Until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.